Greetings everyone, and welcome to the special interview conducted by the Magazine Committee of Department of Political Science, Shahid Bhagat Singh College, University of Delhi. Today, we are pleased to welcome Ms. Mitali Nikore, who is the founder and chief economist at Nikore Associate, which is a policy research and advisory firm working at the intersection of public finance, corporate strategy, and inclusive growth. She has worked extensively with governments, multilateral institutions, and private sector leaders and is widely recognized for her analysis on union budgets, gender responsive budgeting, and India's macroeconomic policy landscape. So, our topic today is Budget 2026, Corporate India, and Inclusive Growth. So, thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us today. I would like to begin with the first question we are having. So, ma'am, when you first read Budget 2026, what was your immediate takeaway? What bigger story do you think it is telling about the government's role in Indian economy today?
This time's budget is very different from all of the other budgets that we've seen because typically when you see a budget, you think about domestic issues. You think about, okay, what is happening in India and how is this amount of money which the government has, how will they distribute it for people's welfare in the context of India's growth and what is happening internally. But very honestly, this year I really thought, and it was very clear in the budget speech as well, that economic security was one of the major considerations because it's not only about India's domestic economy this year, it was very much about, when you compare it with all of the geopolitical events that are taking place, the tensions, the trade deals, everything that's happening outside, and which a lot of it is not in our control. I think it was really related to that. So I really feel that this time's budget it was made in a very challenging time, and I think it's fantastic that the government was able to really do that, manage that, balance a lot of things. So it was a tough one.
Yeah, okay. So moving on to the next question we have that for the last few years, it feels like public spending, especially capex, has been
Hmm.
carrying most of the growth. So do you think this is just a temporary push, or is it the new state slowly becoming the main engine because private investment hasn't picked up enough?
So again, the question, is quite there's quite a lot of contradictions and questions within this question itself. Kyunki the standard narrative that we have is that the government should keep on investing in infrastructure so as to crowd in private investment, right? And to unlock private investment. Now, firstly, I feel like the people who are saying that private investment hasn't picked up, that's not quite true because when we look at the amount of private investment that's still coming in, and we've seen that domestic private investors have become almost 8 to 10x bigger than they were 1 decade ago. See, we have to measure these things decadally. People who say private investment is not picking up, they are looking at year-on-year growth, and they are expecting that the rate at which the government is investing the private sector should invest at the same rate. But it doesn't work like that in a developing country. In a developing country, for a private sector player, there are too many risks. So for us, the biggest, the barometer should be how much has FDI picked up, which it has. We have seen that FDI is growing, in 2022 and 23 were some of the years in which we saw immediately post COVID, one of the biggest destinations for FDI was India. And 2024 also we received a considerable amount. It is just that it slowed in 2025 because of US pressure. And there was a geopolitical sense to it that, oh, don't go and invest in India. It is not the alternative to China that we all have been planning. And now suddenly that policy also has been reversed in just 2 weeks of last 2 weeks. And again, we are seeing the FDI rebound taking place. So, FDI is coming in. FII activity, we can't be a barometer for economic health. That is literally speculative investment activity from, foreign investors. And if we look at domestic private investment, definitely that has been unlocked, not at the same rate as private investment, I mean, as public investment, but it has been unlocked. If you look at the last 10 years, we've only seen an increase. So, see, I'm not giving you numbers here because numbers you can always look up, but you have to understand the trends, right? That is the direction, the broad direction is important. And I assure you the numbers are there. If you look them up, they're there, which will, but the main thing I want your listeners to understand, because this is a podcast, right? They're not doing I'm not teaching you, so I'm not coming with slides and showing you numbers. But I want you to understand this, that the direction has actually been positive. And public investment, see, I'm also a big believer in that school of thought of less government and even less governance and just less regulation and just generally less government presence. Because, in our country, everything has been over-regulated, over-governed, I mean, abhi bhi, like, if you think about it, I'll give you an example. I'm working on one of the schemes which is for childcare. And there are some childcare crash guidelines. Usme itna bhi specified hai that what is the, size of the room that will qualify as a crash. Now, the issue with this regulation is that the entire country is different. And if you have, half of that room available and it is comfortable for lesser number of kids, that can still be made into a crash. But it is called childcare center and not a crash because the guidelines में fit नहीं होता. So this is the amount of regulation that we are dealing with is the smallest of them. Now imagine this is not even an industry regulation. The industry regulations are even more mind-boggling. So you have to, in an industrial plot, you have to leave certain amount of space for, compliance activities. Like you have some parking, you have some setbacks, you have some fire, fire space डालना है अब आपको, फिर वहाँ पे sanitation facility, but the amount of space that is mandated is not practical. So the MSMEs are actually the ones who get the worst kind of, the worst brunt of it because they really are the ones who, have the most amount of constraints. So honestly, the regulations need to come down. Ease of doing business still has to improve, but we still have seen that the government is committed to reforms. They have made this like a reform forward budget and this is the direction. So the broad direction that we are going in, the budget contributes to that and it makes sense to me.
Yeah, right. Full said, man. Moving on to the next question, we have that even with the strong growth numbers, as you mentioned, that the companies still seem cautious about investment big. So, from your conversation with industry, what's really holding them back? Global risk or issues closer home like policy uncertainty and regulatory friction?
Yeah, so I think this very much continues with exactly what I was saying in the previous answer as well. That the regulatory barriers are simply too many. And there are too many differences also. Every state is different. So I was speaking to somebody who is heading global capability centers in India.
Okay.
Like he runs a company which has a lot of GCCs in India. He said I wanted to establish 3 facilities in Delhi NCR, one in Noida, one in Delhi, and one in Gurgaon. And I wanted to have my staff have the flexibility to work across the 3 of them because some people live in Delhi, some people live in Gurgaon, some people live in Noida. So if they keep on rotating between these 3 locations, they will have to commute, less. Someday somebody will have to commute, the other day that person is convenient for them, and the one who's living in Noida can come to Gurgaon. One day the person who's living in, Gurgaon can go to Noida. So that way I wanted to have that, labor mobility across my locations. And he didn't want to divide the teams. He said, I need the whole teams to be present for certain functions. So I want to have them keep moving on different days of the week.
Okay.
Very practical idea. Instead of having 100 people in 3 locations, you build for 300 in each place and keep them moving. Makes sense. But he could not achieve it because the labor regulation is different in each state. So in some states, someday it's a holiday, because उस दिन का state holiday वो है. Then in some states, it is like night shift is permitted for women. Some states do not permit night shift. Like UP does not permit night shift for women. Basically, they have made so many regulations around women's safety that they say कि basically it's impossible for a woman to work in night shift in UP
Okay.
because those are even difficult for a large company to comply. And then there are issues with just understanding the amount of again, as I said, the building norms and everything are different. So he said you can't have standardization even across Delhi NCR. What will you have standardization in the rest of the country? So this plug and play model, which a lot of corporates have, which a lot of industries have, and they want to bring that plug and play to India also, that they have standardized a certain kind of office or they have standardized a certain kind of industry or manufacturing setup. They can't bring it to India because half of the times Indian laws and Indian compliances don't match the global standards. So if we are opening up our economy so much, we have to export and we have to have free trade agreements and we want to meet those standards, it is very critical for us to now harmonize our regulations as well to meet those standards and go from there.
Okay, interesting. So moving on to the next question, it's majorly about MSMEs, as you mentioned. So the question we have that we also see growth getting concentrated among a few large corporate groups. Does that kind of scale strengthen India globally, or does it make the economic ecosystem tough for MSMEs and new founders?
So I think it's both,
Okay.
if you can imagine. So on one side, what it does is that the MSMEs who have managed to invest in their technical upgradation, it positions them very well to get a good chunk of the global value chains, to link in with the global value chains, because when the foreign companies come to India, they will need MSMEs as their suppliers. That is for sure. So the ones who have, managed to upgrade themselves or upskill the staff and get in that kind of, the equipment that is required for meeting the foreign quality standards, they will benefit immensely. But the ones who, haven't been able to do this for whatever reason, like they are too small or they just couldn't access the government schemes, they will definitely lose out because, then most of the contracts will go to the companies that have actually managed to upgrade themselves. So in this situation, I really feel that the government has a role to play where every district in this country has something called an MSME district industry center. And that DIC actually has an officer which takes care of the MSME development in that district. So it is the responsibilities of these officers to now go out, have discussions with the MSMEs in their district and tell them, look, this is the fund that has been made available. Central government has put in a fund of almost 10,000 crores this year to create champion MSMEs in the budget. So this is the opportunity, if in my district I can find, even 10 champion MSMEs, that would be amazing. And I can get them funding from central government. So now this is little bit on the, state governments and the district administration that you actually do what needs to be done.
Right, ma'am. So next we move to the question which is more about government incentive. Like this particular budget offers a lot of incentive like tax breaks, PLI schemes and subsidies. But honestly, what matters more to business, this incentives or simple things like predictable rules, faster approvals and institutional stability?
So, some of this is not even the part of the budget, right? I
Mm,
mean, technically, faster approvals is something which is just a regulatory change which has to
yeah,
be brought in, and that's not even the purview of the central government, it's the purview of the state government. So, some of that is really not of the central government. What central government has tried to do this time is really do a push on domestic manufacturing. So, and even in those sectors that we are not good at. So you look at sectors like semiconductors, the Indian Semiconductor Mission 2.0 was launched. Then you have sectors like electronics. अब electronics में हम सब कुछ ही import कर रहे हैं अभी China से. So we have to build up our, domestic capabilities so that they launch the electronics component scheme. That okay, like we create. See, when we started manufacturing auto components, India was terrible at it. India don't have any capacity in making auto components, and yet now today we have thriving clusters like Hosur, and we have clusters in Gurgaon, outside of Gurgaon, where you do see, and Manesar, where you do see so much auto component manufacturing. So ये overnight तो नहीं बने हैं. There were auto component incentive schemes that were available to them. They took the benefit of that, and see, at the end of the day, every auto component company links in with a value chain. So Hero, for example, created a lot of the auto component companies that are present around Gurgaon and Manesar because they put their two-wheeler plant in Manesar. Similarly, TVS built the entire ecosystem, I would say, in Hosur because they put their two-wheeler plant in Hosur. So, no, a lot of, it began from there, and then like you come in with a large anchor investor, and the entire industry then develops from there. So that is what we have to see in electronics. Now we have already seen that through the electronics PLI scheme, a lot of foreign electronics companies have come to India. Samsung is one example. Right. So again, we have to think about now, okay, Samsung to aa gaya, but Samsung ke parts kahan se aa gaye? And that is where we, capture the entire value chain. So, ideally, that's what should happen.
All right, ma'am. So the next question we have that with supply chain shifting and the US-China rivalry heating up, economics today feels like a geopolitical. So how should Indian companies think differently about going global in this environment?
It's a tough, very tough question. And I think it's very tough. If I was an Indian company, like if I was an Indian MSME today, I would be very stressed. Because of two reasons. If I don't act fast, I'll lose out on opportunities. But also because there's so many opportunities, I may not be sure of what to go for. Should I go to improve my standards to European standards because India EU FTA aa gaya? Or should I go and say, no, my market is going to be Gulf and India Gulf FTA aa gaya? Or maybe things are getting fixed between India and US, so let me continue to work on US market because that's the highest premium I get. Or do I want to enter the UK market, though it's not that premium as EU and US, but still it's a big enough market for my product. So as a MSME today, and because MSMEs cannot afford consultants, right? All of you who will be joining consulting firms, MSMEs को तुम नहीं advise करोगे because वो तो consulting firms नहीं करती है. But today I feel MSMEs need to have a strategy.
Okay.
This is the time when going to a management consultant is genuinely justified, even for an MSME. And I think that somewhere the industry bodies like CII and FICCI, ASSOCHAM, VSG Chamber, other industry chambers which are sector specific, also have some role to play where they have to help the MSMEs in each sector identify the best market for them, which is opening up with the FTAs, because the FTAs are extremely complex. It will take about a year or two for the FTA clauses to come into force. So अभी आपके पास आप समझो 2 साल है. Next 2 साल में as an MSME, they should ramp up, they should plan, and they should build their marketing networks in those countries. अगर आपका plan है कि आपको US में expand करना है, then you hire somebody in the US to help you understand the market and to build your market linkages for you. Similarly for Apple. So I met somebody recently. She was a co-panelist with me in one of the budget debates.
Okay.
She runs a laundry service.
Okay.
And that is present in 40 countries. मैंने कहा यार मतलब यहाँ इंडिया में बैठ के 40 countries में वो laundry चला रही है. But she has her networks, she has a leasing model, she has built a brand. So, and she's an MSME. And woman-led MSME, like it was really impressive. So I'm just saying that these are the kind of thoda investment, yes, in the beginning karna padega to make those connections and have the right advice in terms of what is the right market to target, etc. Given the specific brand that people have, but at the same time, I think it's worth it. It's worth it to make that investment because abhi jo India is placing itself in the middle of so many global value chains. So much production can happen in India and then go to so many countries. So much of re-export and import can happen from India because, say, if we import oil from GCC countries, we refine it, we can then sell it to Europe, and all of it can be duty free, at least on paper. We have to see the specific rules, etc., when they come for different commodities, and if oil, for example, would be included in that. But we have to, I mean, these are the kind of opportunities that entrepreneurs need to spot.
Okay. Then moving on to the next question, which I myself is personally very excited to ask you, which is about gender budgeting. So you have often said gender budgeting isn't just about social policy, but it's more about smart economics. So do you feel this year's budget really treats women participation as a growth strategy, or is it still seen more as a welfare spending?
I think it's still seen more as a welfare spending. So
Okay.
I actually went through the gender budget, and while the amount has really expanded, and we've also seen that, it is like now 49 departments this year have reported on the gender budget. The total amount is around 5 lakh crores, which is much higher than, previous year's highest ever. But still the spending is concentrated in, social protection initiatives. Like, for example, in the PM, this Garib Kalyan Yojana,
Yeah.
where you give the free food grains, and it is still concentrated very much in for example, just those kind of nutrition program, anganwadi, etc., which is all important. See, I'm not saying that's not important, it is
Hmm.
hugely important, but we still have to keep on investing in the economic side, like,
Okay.
we have to unlock for, like, for example, safe cities. We would
Hmm.
have It would have been so good to have a program on safe cities or digital skilling, because that directly relates to employability. So basically, the schemes for employability of women, and skill training and entrepreneurship are much lesser. I'm not saying they're missing because now nothing is missing. We still have some, but it's not enough. And we still need much more of that. And even when we look at the quantum, we find that nearly 2 lakh crores out of the 5 lakh crores is for social protection only,
Yeah.
and then the rest is distributed between education, health, affordable housing, but and very little on employability. So we still need that to come in.
True, ma'am. So moving on to the next, sorry, the final question we have, that if you could change some of the things in India's fiscal or corporate policy to strengthen our economy for the next decade, so what would you prioritize?
So I think I am more of an expert on the expenditure side, so I will speak a little bit on that. But definitely, I think on the revenue side also there are reforms that tax experts often talk about. See, the reality is that 91% of India earns less than 12 lakhs a month, a year, sorry, 12 lakhs a year.
Okay.
So they are not taxpayers, right?
Mm.
Only 9% of the country is a taxpayer. So our fiscal envelope is now set in such a way that, of course, it should increase over time as people's incomes increase. The direct tax collection should also increase, and more people should come up, above the 12 lakh, like per annum amount. But it's still, I mean, it will take time, right? So I feel like on the revenue side, while we still need some, cleaning up and simplification, particularly of, the what we need is cleaning up of corporate tax, and we need cleaning up for, small cesses and duties. Because बहुत सारे छोटे छोटे सेस छोटे छोटे ड्यूटीज हैं, and like they have done this clean up with the income tax कि बस भाई 12 लाख से नीचे आपको देना ही नहीं, because the amount that is coming is so less, and the number of people who are then paying that, but isn't it easier to just collect larger amounts from smaller number of people and then leave that large last marginal bit? So same thing we have to do for others also, like other duties and other cesses. So that cleanup is good. It should happen on the revenue side, but and also on the corporate tax side, because then you have to keep on investing, getting an investment. But on the expenditure side, I do think that one area which got missed in this time's budget is renewable energy, because we didn't see that push. We just didn't see that push, and it should have been there because see, right now the whole world is basically telling us वेनेजुएलन ऑयल ले लो, रशियन ऑयल ले लो, ईरानियन ऑयल ले लो, मतलब क्या है ये सब्जी मंडी बना के रखा हुआ है। So we need to be completely energy independent, and that's not going to happen unless we invest in renewables, because India has ample sunlight. So India can actually leverage solar energy quite well. We have we can develop on biogas, we can develop on hydro, we can develop on wind energy. So there are a lot of non-renewable का छोड़ सकते हैं हम लोग, like we can move towards more renewables. So I think that was one area which I really felt that we needed more focus on. The other thing is, though we mentioned it in last time's budget, it's transit oriented development. It was mentioned in last time's budget. This time also we spoke a bit about it, like in terms of the urban rejuvenation and the fact that cities as economic regions. So I feel like the government understands that that's a priority, like massively understands it, that it is required as cities are becoming more and more populated. They need quick solutions, and fungible instruments like quick funding. अगर आपके पास एक आइडिया आया which you think is good for the city, as a city planner, you should be able to get some funds to actually implement it. But वो होता नहीं है in practice. It's just too many layers, too many hoops. So we need like outcome based funding for cities. That I have a fund, central government के पास है या state government के पास है, fund of funds बना दो, and then you just no, I think I want to build this particular thing over here. It would be really good. Quick approval, quick banana. So that kind of planning and city for cities as economic regions, the concept to work, and for transit-oriented development, which is mentioned in last year's budget to work, we really need cities to have access to some money, which they currently don't. And third, of course, I really feel that there needs to be more investment in inclusion. But the gender is only one part of inclusion. It's a big part of inclusion, but gender is beyond gender. Persons with disabilities, and in this time, a Divyang mission has been launched. But that again is from a social protection side. But there is so much innovation in the care economy, for example, that you can do now with AI. That you can literally bring in assisted devices. Imagine, if India was manufacturing the best assisted devices for persons with disabilities and exporting them to the entire world. So that's the kind of business that you want to back as a country. So I really think that these are areas, and then I think biodiversity is also very important. Matlab, literally, I feel like we need green sinks. So green sinks is like a concept where certain parts of your country which are highly critical for the ecosystem should be just left and not developed, and you fund the people and the development of those areas from a central government fund and say, I will pay you every year something for not cutting that forest. I will pay you something for not mining that area. I will pay you something for not digging that particular beach. you know so we need to start thinking about green sinks, that has to be funded out of the central government budget.
Rightfully said, ma'am. Very interesting perspective. I mean, we should develop on this particular areas. And yeah, thank you so much for joining with us today. It has been such an enlightening session for me, and I hope for our audience for as well. And yeah, we will see you in the next podcast. So